Good evening to everyone. With due respect to the dignitaries present here, on behalf of Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, I, Dr. Karuna Akshay Malviya, Director, Center for Advanced Training in Taxation Laws, extend very warm welcome to all of you. With pride and humble gratitude, I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Dilip Ukeji, under whose leadership, expert guidance, and knowledge-oriented encouragement, Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai is emerging in the field of research and education, with realizing the social responsibility in disciplined manner. Sir has a vast experience in teaching and delivering research in contemporary constitutional issues and has guided and guiding research scholars in versatile sectors of laws in comparison to Constitution of India. I welcome our respected registrar, Professor Dr. Anil Varyaji, whose extraordinary dedication and vision has inculcated the spirit of knowledge sharing and gaining platform in MNLU Mumbai. Remembering Dr. B.R.Ambedkar on his 100th anniversary is to pay gratitude for his unconditional contribution in the elevation of social structure and unifying the segments of society for better unified India. Dr. Ambedkar's vision, inspiring life and thoughts reinforce our conviction that the nation is to be governed with absolute commitment, positive thinking, judicious planning, optimum effort, harmonizing initiatives, and relentless determination. We all know Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and his successful efforts in realization of the rights of underprivileged class of society. I name the class so because since ages, this class have been deprived of social status in society and the wheel of unorthodox practices and deliberate submersion in the name of religion has been uplifted by this great jurist, philosopher with his extraordinary intelligence and with only compassion for humanity. I recall here and reiterate the words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Be educated, be organized, and be educated. The true application and interpretation of these words is not in the way of agitation or demonstration for securing rights and equality. However, here the transformation sought is through deliberation of valid thoughts and participation in the policy making system of government for proper representation and governance. I feel privileged to welcome our chief guest on behalf of Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, the most distinguished personality to be highlighting us on the thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on Indian economy is none other than Dr. Narendra Jadhav, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. We are fortunate to have with us our distinguished guest, Dr. Narendra Jadhav. The name is itself an identity, not only expanded in India but in world at large. He being distinguished economist, social scientist, award-winning author, not only played his role in the policy making of government, but through his active writings in most of the languages, Indian as well as foreign, has earned special place in the hearts of people. I will briefly read out the profile of Dr. Narendra Jadhav. Dr. Narendra Jadhav is a nominated member of Parliament Rajya Sabha. Professionally, Dr. Jadhav is an independent member of Parliament, has carved out a distinct place for himself through his studious intervention in the House and while serving on various standing committees, that is, finance, commerce, information technology, social justice and empowerment and welfare of SC/ST class, as well as consultative communities like external affairs, tourism, and culture. The life story of Dr. Narendra Jadhav is a story of emerging resurgent Indian and its great potential. A celebrated public figure, Dr. Narendra Jadhav is a recipient of as many as 70 national and international awards for his contribution to education, literature, culture, and social work besides economics. As a career in economist, Dr. Jadhav worked for 31 years with Reserve Bank of India and other central banks, that is the Afghanistan Bank and the National Bank of Ethiopia. He also worked as advisor in the International Monetary Fund for over 4 years. Dr. Jadhav took voluntary retirement in October 2008 from the position of principal advisor and Chief Economist of RBI in the rank of Executive Director. In 2006, Dr. Jadhav was appointed as Vice Chancellor of University of Pune. Within 3 years, he transformed the university into a vibrant and dynamic center of excellence and singularly contributed to making it to the most favored destination for foreign students coming to India. The vision that Dr. Jadhav had articulated for Pune University led him to Planning Commission as a member in charge of education, labor and employment, and social justice and empowerment, and also as a member of National Advisory Council. Over the years, Dr. Jadhav has authored 31 official reports on wide range of public policy issues. Never a cloistered scholar, Dr. Jadhav has been a prolific writer. In spite of being engaged in public service spanning more than 4 decades, he has written or edited 41 books in 3 languages, besides over 300 research papers and articles. He has written or edited 21 books on Dr. Ambedkar, 9 in English, 8 in Marathi, and 4 in Hindi, comprising an intellectual biography, picture biographies, and edited speeches and writings of Dr. Ambedkar. These books help establish Dr. Ambedkar as an intellectual colossus and truly a national leader and not merely an icon of underprivileged. The words are less for his continuous contribution, not only to Indian society, but to the world at large. Last but not the least, Dr. Jadhav is an outstanding public speaker. He has delivered numerous memorial lectures, convocation address, and guest lectures in national and international forums, aimed at educating the general public and helping build consensus around the ongoing educational and economic reforms in India. And so, as this magnificent personality, Dr. Narendra Jadhav, is present with us to highlight upon the great thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on Indian economy. Now, I request our respected registrar, Dr. Anil Varyaji, to give his opening address.
Good evening, Dr. Karna Madam. Respected Chief Guest, Dr. Narendra Jadhav, respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Dilip Uke Sir, other participants, faculties, and staff of the university. As Dr. Karuna said, Dr. Ambedkar needs no introduction to anybody in the world. So is our Chief Guest today. Dr. Narendra Jadhav also requires no introduction. So I will take this opportunity to limit myself to a few things. First of all, to let the participants know, those who are not from the university, those who are outside MNLU, to know that MNLU, the Maharashtra National Law University, over this short period has established itself as a center for excellence in legal learning. So not only legal learning, unlike many other institutions of excellence, we have also taken up, especially after our Vice Chancellor Professor Dilip Uke has joined, we have taken up the cause of community, the cause of nation building, the cause of nationalism. So we have started paying tribute to great national leaders. We had an occasion to pay tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and now it is the turn to pay our tribute and homage to the founder of our constitution, the architect of our constitution, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So regarding Baba Sahib Ambedkar, yesterday being his birth anniversary, we have been receiving a lot of messages and comments in the social media. One of which attracted me a lot and which moved me a lot is that someone has forwarded it. We are here today because he was. It is true. That is the most perfect and most fitting homage to Baba Sahib Ambedkar. So I take this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Karna Malavia as well as Melin Gawai for taking the lead in arranging this program. And also my thanks and deep sense of gratitude to our Vice Chancellor for permitting us to do this program. And also we are honored with the presence of a great economist like Dr. Narendra Jadhav. So I take this opportunity to wish this program a grand success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Dilip Ukeji, to kindly give his presidential address.
Thank you, Dr. Karuna Madam. Very good evening to all of you. Today's our esteemed speaker, a philanthropist, a philosopher, great economist, administrator, an academician, a social reformer, a great orator, an author, writer, and whatnot, Dr. Narendra Jadhav sir, my colleague Dr. Anilji Variyat, all my other colleagues, staff members, students, and dear participants. It's indeed our great privilege and pleasure to have Dr. Narendra Jadhav sir today to pay the tribute and homage to modern Manu, a Vishwaratna, a Bharat Ratna, not only an architect of Indian Constitution, but an architect of this great nation, Bharat Ratna Dr. B.R.Ambedkar, Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Before I say anything about Dr. Ambedkar, as I recall, Dr. Jadhav sir's stint as a Vice Chancellor of then Pune University, not only as an administrator, but as a mentor, as a guide, as I said, a nation builder, in a sense that today we are hearing the slogan or the motto of the Government of India or Prime Minister of India, that is Atmanirbhar Bharat. For the sake of information of all others, because when Dr. Jadhav sir was a Vice Chancellor at Pune University, I was the member of Executive Council. We call it as a Management Council then, and we have closely associated work with Dr. Jadhav sir, and under his able guidance. And then he launched the program which was known as Samarth Bharat Abhiyan, wherein those 12 points, which were not only meant to uplift the academic growth or level of the colleges as well as the university, but how to build this society, how to build the social structure, social fiber of this country. And he led by an example, launching this Samarth Bharat Abhiyan. Today we call it as Atmanirbhar Bharat. I would say that Samarth Bharat Abhiyan was the basic foundation of today's Atmanirbhar Bharat. Unless you are capable India, till then you cannot be self-reliant as such. And in that sense, he is a social reformer, social transformer as such. Of course, I am also equally keen and eager to listen to his thoughts on Dr. Ambedkar and Indian economy. He being an expert and experienced, richly experienced one in the domain of economy as well as finances and banking sector. When you talk about Dr. Ambedkar, as Dr. Variyat has mentioned that just yesterday we celebrated his 130th birth anniversary. I do not wish to take much of the time, as we know that not only the architect of the Indian Constitution, as he has contributed immensely as the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution, wherein several of his thoughts were incorporated, ingrained in the Indian Constitution. As the notion of democracy and definition of democracy, we know that the Abraham Lincoln's definition, that is, democracy is nothing but the government for the people, of the people, and by the people. Dr. Ambedkar did not accept that definition of democracy. Rather, for him, he came out with, coined the new definition of democracy. And according to him, democracy is nothing but the form and method of the government whereby revolutionary changes in social and economic lives of people could be brought without any bloodshed. That has been the definition of democracy. And it was not the definition, it was the way of life. Why? Because why I'm saying way of life? Because Dr. Ambedkar did not accept the notion of democracy, which is a political democracy. According to him, political democracy is one. What we need is the social democracy. As all of us are aware that the whole society was divided in Chaturvarnya system. Dr. Ambedkar, who showed to the whole world, not only to the nation, how a person who born in a depressed class, a Dalit class, could rise to the heights and scale those heights without any such a kind of any support much. Of course, Maharaja Sayajirao Gaikwad supported him immensely, wherein he did not believe in political democracy, but rather he wanted the social democracy. And according to him, social democracy was nothing but the way of life. Way of life, social democracy is the way of life which recognizes the liberty, equality, and most importantly, fraternity. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. Social democracy is the way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity. That is what rather the common brotherhood, because having had those bitter experiences throughout his life, and that's why he wanted the social democracy is to be established. Unless social democracy is established, unless equality is established, what he said that it is not the untouchability which is to be removed. One may wonder that Dr. Ambedkar said that it is not the untouchability which is to be removed, but rather it is the caste system which is to be removed. And that's why he struggled throughout his life, not as a leader, not as a messiah of downtrodden, but rather he is a maker of modern India, because his knowledge, his expertise in finances, particularly the provincial finances, his book on value of rupee, and his thesis on value of rupee, about which, of course, Dr. Jadhav sir would highlight those things. Not only that, even his concern about women. Having served as the labor minister in Viceroy Council for 4 years, and then again having served as a law minister in independent India's ministry led by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, wherein he had tried to contribute immensely. As I said that there are several such things which we could say about Dr. Ambedkar's contribution. Whatever the constitution we have today, largest ever constitution in the world, what he said that I would just mention one point and conclude that. On 25th November 1949, when the constitution was to be adopted on a previous next day, that he said that tomorrow if the constitution fails, it will not be the failure of the constitution, but rather that will be the failure of the people who operate, who manage, and who function under that constitution. With these words, I express my immense gratitude to Dr. Jadhav sir for having accepted our invitation, a great academician, a mentor, a guide, and colleague, under whom and under whose able guidance we have worked and learned several such things. And you will experience his eloquence, his vibrance, and his dynamism during his discourse now. I thank you, sir, so much for having accepted our invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your thought-provoking address. Now, I request our distinguished chief guest, Dr. Narendra Jadhav, sir, to kindly highlight us on the thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on Indian economy.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Karuna, for your very generous introduction. Professor Dr. Dilip Uke, Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra National Law University, Mumbai, and a former colleague at University of Pune University and a very dear friend. I thank him for his kind words about our association at the Pune University. Shri Anil Varia, other senior office bearers of the Center for Advanced Training in Taxation Laws, faculty members, students, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, let me offer my humble tribute to the ever-inspiring memory of Dr. Ambedkar on the occasion of 130th birth anniversary of Dr. Ambedkar. I'm truly delighted to be here with all of you online and feel greatly honored to have been invited to be a chief guest at this webinar on the theme of the thoughts of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar on the Indian economy. I commend Professor Dilip Uke and his team for organizing this webinar on a subject of a great contemporary relevance. Well, friends, Dr. Ambedkar was an intellectual colossus, a very multifaceted personality. He was an economist, he was a sociologist, he was an economic administrator, he was a social reformer, he was educationist, he was social anthropologist, he was a statesman, and he was an authority on comparative religion, and above all, he was the principal architect of the great Indian Constitution. I was pleased when Karunaji mentioned that, quoting someone that, I think Mr. Waria said that we are here because he was. When I ask myself, what is the contribution made by Dr. Ambedkar? If it is to be written, or if it is to be spoken in just few words, one sentence or two, I would like to quote what Dr. Ambedkar used to quote from a Greek philosopher. I think Thucydides or somebody like that, a Greek philosopher long ago. He said, it may be in the interest of others. It may be in the interest of others to be your masters. But why should it be in your interest to be their slaves? This was the question which was not asked by the depressed classes of India for thousands of years. It is when they ask this question that it may be in the interest of others to be your masters, but why should it be in my interest to be your slave? When they started asking this question, that is where they got their self-dignity. That's where they came out of the inferiority complex, the collective inferiority complex that they had. And that is when they started shaping their life under the direction of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. That is his net contribution. But today, we are not going to talk about his overall contribution. We are going to talk about two specific aspects of Dr. Ambedkar as his role as an economist and the relevance of his economic thoughts for the Indian economy today. Dr. Ambedkar was one of the most educated, the most highly educated politician in this country, and the most highly erudite economist of this country. In fact, two Indians have got Nobel Prize in economics in the recent years. One is Professor Amartya Sen, and the second one is Professor Abhijit Banerjee. But I can tell you that if I'm asked as an economist, who is the greatest ever economist made in India? My unambiguous answer would be Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. I'll tell you why. First of all, technically speaking, Nobel Prize really doesn't mean anything. And Nobel Prize in Economics started in 1969. That is 13 years after Dr. Ambedkar's sad demise or Mahaparinirvan, as we call it. That is not a big issue. The issue is Dr. Ambedkar was the most learned economist of this country. And I'm going to explain to you how. As I said, although Dr. Ambedkar had so many different facets to his personality, he was essentially an economist. Why do I say that? It is because all his big degrees, excepting law, all his big degrees are in economics. Take his MA that he did from Columbia University in United States. The year was 1915. That degree of MA was in economics. Then from the same university, Columbia University in New York, he had his PhD, which was also in economics. Then he went over to England and he studied in London School of Economics. And he got Doctor of Science degree in economics from London School of Economics. So all his major degrees are in economics. And while he was working on his Doctor of Science degree in London School of Economics, side by side in the Gray's Inn, he studied law and became a barrister. Because his idea was after he comes back, his being lawyer would be helpful to him for running his day-to-day life, and he can rest his time, the rest of his time, he can devote to social work and for writing books. These are his own words, not mine. So he did law by an accident in addition to the main study that was economics. Now, Dr. Ambedkar wrote two big books on economics. In all, Dr. Ambedkar wrote 22 very influential, seminal kind of books on a very wide range of subjects. Economics, law, history, anthropology, comparative religion, and so on. So, but on economics, he wrote two books and one very important research paper. There were other research papers too. In all, he wrote 10 research papers and book reviews. But we are going to talk about his two main books in economics. His PhD dissertation at the Columbia University was titled Evolution of Provincial Finances in British India. What does this book do? Basically, what this book does is that it reviews and analyzes the financial relationship between Britain's central government, British government in India, central government in India, and the provinces in India. What we call states today, they were called provinces at that time. Bombay was a big province, which has now become Maharashtra and Gujarat state. So at that time, so he, over a very long span of time, from 1833 to 1920-21, he reviews and analyzes how the financial relationship between the British central government in Delhi and those in provinces, how did that relationship evolve? He analyzes that, and at the end of it, he talks about how that relationship should have been. So he gives out the principles of the ideal fiscal relationship between, in the modern parlance, center and states. What is the relevance of this book? Dr. Ambedkar, as a legal luminary and as the principal architect of the Indian Constitution, was essentially an economist. That is why, if you compare Indian Constitution with any other constitution in the world, you will find that the Indian Constitution had proportionately more provisions of law than any other constitution. One of them is very interesting and very important. I do not know the particular article because that's your subject, not mine. But there is a provision of finance commission. So every 5 years, the government is supposed to appoint a finance commission. Very recently, the 15th Finance Commission has submitted their report, which is under consideration. That will cover the years from 20 to 25, 2020 to 2025. What does a Finance Commission typically do? What a Finance Commission does is to make recommendations about distribution of tax and non-tax revenue that is collected by the central government. Central government, through various taxes, collects revenue. It's the tax revenue as well as little bit of non-tax revenue. So how much of this total revenue central government will retain and how much of this total revenue will be distributed to the states? And what would be the principles governing that distribution of this share of the states to them? This is what Finance Commission does. And they have made some very important recommendations. For example, the 14th Finance Commission made a recommendation that the state's share in the total revenue should be increased by 10 percentage points from 32 to 42. This was a big jump. Some other Finance Commission recommended that money should directly, a part of the money should directly go to the local self-government rather than going through the respective state government. It should go to the third layer of government directly. These are the principles, these are the guidelines given by the Finance Commission. If you look at all the reports of the 15 Finance Commissions submitted so far, you will find that the very basic source, the basic reference material, the seminal first attempt about this was made by Dr. Ambedkar in his PhD dissertation at the Columbia University, United States. That is the importance. When Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi talks about collaboration and consultation between center and states, cooperative federalism is one of the expressions used. All these principles of the state and relationship between center and the states, they are important, they were important, they are important and are going to be important in the future. But the seminal work in this area was done taking a long historical review by Dr. Ambedkar for his PhD. The other book that he has written for his, that is his dissertation for Doctor of Science degree. Now this degree, which is the highest degree in economics, as you can imagine. So for that, he wrote a dissertation. The title is very, very interesting. The Problem of Rupee, its Origin and its Solution. The problem of rupee continues even today, as we all know. What did Ambedkar do? That is really a magnum opus that he wrote. It's an exceedingly difficult book. I can tell you that I'm yet to meet even a professor of economics, and it's my challenge, to tell me exactly what does that book contain, in simple terms. It's an extremely technically difficult book that Dr. Ambedkar has written, but very original and very, very, it is a magnum opus of Dr. Ambedkar in the field of economics. What does he do in that book? To make things very simple and even simplistic. I would say that, first of all, he takes a review, historical review. That was his style. He takes a long historical review from 1833 to about 1920 as to how the Indian currency, that is, how the Indian rupee has evolved over this long period of time as a medium of exchange. That is the basic function of currency. medium of exchange. So rather than exchanging goods for goods, barter exchange, money is a medium of exchange which facilitates the economic processes. Uh, that is understood by everybody. That's the basic of monetary economics. So how has rupee evolved? Rupee was once upon a time on a gold standard. It was affiliated to gold. Then it was affiliated to silver. Then it was again affiliated to gold. And it went through many variations. This is before paper currency. Then there was a paper currency, and that paper currency was backed up by gold. A lot of people even today believe that our currency is backed up by gold. Nonsense. That process stopped in 1956, by the way. Now, based on the gold stock that the Reserve Bank has, which is fairly large, RBI can issue any amount of currency, and there is no one-to-one relationship between the two. But that is just a matter of detail for you. When Dr. Ambedkar wrote that, he also discussed something which was very important policy issue. The big challenging policy issue at that time was, what is an ideal currency system for a developing country like India? Can you hear me? It's okay, no?
Yes, sir.
The
We
connection
can,
is
can hear.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
So I'll just continue assuming that you are with me, because time to time there's a small break that I see. Okay, so at that time there were two main alternatives to each other, which were debated by people. One was gold standard, and the second was gold exchange standard. To put it in very simple terms, under gold standard, gold itself is used as a medium of exchange, whereas under gold exchange standard, it's paper currency which is used as money, and it is convertible in gold at a fixed rate which is announced by the government. That is why a piece of paper becomes important, because it is guaranteed by the government and is backed up by gold, at least at that time. So these were the two simple alternatives, extreme alternatives: gold standard or gold exchange standard. The biggest economist of the century, even today it is recognized, was John Maynard Keynes. Keynes, who was one of the greatest economists of that time, that century really, he spent some time in India in 1909, and he came out with this suggestion that good thing for India between these two, choice between these two, gold standard and gold exchange standard, the best thing for people is to go for gold exchange standard. Why? He said gold exchange standard is important, ideal for country like India, because it offers flexibility. It offers flexibility in the sense that in gold standard, the other alternative, the amount of currency would depend on the amount of gold available in the country. That is not going to increase very fast, right? On the other hand, if there is a paper currency indirectly related to gold, then government can increase or decrease the paper currency at will. So that gives the government flexibility in terms of creation of money. So John Maynard Keynes the Great recommended that for a developing country like India, what is needed is a gold exchange standard. When Keynes said that, you can imagine every small Tom, Dick, and Harry economist started talking about gold exchange standard and how that is ideal for India. One person opposed it. That was Dr. Ambedkar. He said no. What his argument was that Keynes is right in the sense that the gold exchange standard offers flexibility. Flexibility is important for a developing country like India. However, he added that the flexibility is a double-edged weapon. It can be good as well as it can be bad. It can be good in the sense that it does not put undue restrictions on the authorities, the central bank or the government, to issue currency. But it can be bad because if the government is irresponsible, then government can create too much money, more currency than what is needed. And if that happens, there would be too much money chasing too few goods, and the result would be inflation. And inflation, he argued, is the most iniquitous form of taxation. You are a taxation expert, so let me say that inflation is a taxation, and it's a taxation which is most iniquitous form of taxation because it hurts the poor the most. So that is why Dr. Ambedkar opposed gold standard, a gold exchange standard, while everybody else was talking about gold exchange standard, and he suggested a modified form of gold standard. Let's not go into the details, but this was basically the argument with the Keynes and everybody else. And he wrote that book of science degree, and when he came back, he threw himself into social life, and he in 1923, November 1923, he got his Doctor of Science degree. And in India in 1924, he started Bahishkruti Hitakarini Sabha, his first social organization. In the year 1925, something interesting happened. The British government sent a mission to India. It was called the Hilton Young Commission. What was the task of this commission? Task of this commission was to create central bank for the country, the Reserve Bank of India, what we call Reserve Bank. In America, they call it Federal Reserve. In different countries, there are different, but these are the central banks. We have a bank called Central Bank, but that is a commercial bank. The Central Bank of India is Reserve Bank of India. So Hilton Young Commission's job was to design and give a detailed report on how to create a central bank for the country. Now, when they did that, the commission came here and they met a number of experts, but one expert who went before them and testified and gave detailed evidence was Dr. B.R.Ambedkar. Now, that testimony was missing from the record. And I remember long ago when I was with the Reserve Bank of India, Vasant Moon, who was the editor of Ambedkar's work and speeches, he came to me and he talked about this testimony. He said, I have read a cross-reference, but nobody had that. So I took him to the antique room of Reserve Bank of India, the record room, and the poor fellow sat there whole day. Time to time I was going there, and he finally located that testimony. And that is how that testimony came into life, and it was included in the BAWS, I think volume 5 or volume 6. So this testimony was very important, and based on, it was an integral part of the Hilton Young Commission's report. I'm not saying that Hilton Young Commission was entirely based on the Dr. Ambedkar's testimony. Some people have been saying that, but they are ignorant, and so less said the better. So actually, after meeting all these experts, listening to their testimony, taking their evidence, finally the report was made. Dr. Ambedkar's testimony was one of the most important ones, but was not the only one. Then finally they gave the report. Finally, the report was prepared and submitted. And 8 years after that, 1st April 1935, the Reserve Bank of India was set up, was established. And it's hard to imagine Reserve Bank of India came into being as a private shareholders bank. Can you imagine that? It's unthinkable now, but that was the fact. In 1935, 1st April, April Fool's Day, 1st April 1935, Reserve Bank of India came into being. And for that, Dr. Ambedkar is directly or indirectly involved in the process of creation of the central bank of our country, that is Reserve Bank of India, although it is not widely recognized as such. That is the second contribution. Now, this is about his academic contribution to economics and somewhat practical. But Dr. Ambedkar was not a bookish economist. He got himself involved in all social and other problems. And the most important contribution of Dr. Ambedkar there as an economist is that he was the first economist in our country to analyze the adverse effect of social maladies like caste system in our country. So he was the first one. Caste system on social grounds, from Mahatma Phule and earlier, a lot of people have talked about it. But the economic dimensions of the caste system and how it has done irreparable damage to India's growth and development. That was thesis that brought out by Dr. Ambedkar for the first time. And his reasoning was very simple. When you confine education to only 3% of the population, when you restrict people, those who will hold the arms, when you deny education to 97.5% people and confine them to menial tasks, majority of depressed classes, untouchables, they were confined to menial classes. No matter how brilliant you are coming from depressed classes, you have to confine yourself to menial tasks. Just imagine how many Einstein might have been produced there, but they must have spent their lives sweeping the floor, right? On the other hand, if you are coming from a particular high caste, then irrespective of your merit, so-called merit or potential, you were always, learning and preaching always remained your right, and people would give you money for all kinds of things, including the no, I'll refrain from saying that, but those were the rights given to them and deprived. A very large part of the Indian society was denied the opportunities. What is the difference between the so-called upper caste and so-called lower caste? One word: opportunity. If given the opportunity, they would have done much better. So by confining them to menial tasks, such a large strata of society, confining them to menial tasks, we have not only done damage to those families, welfare of those families, we have done a permanent damage to the country as a whole, the society as a whole. In fact, completely, this was the thesis that Dr. Ambedkar talked about for long. I have been taking that further and trying to find corroborative evidence, and something very interesting I found. GDP, everybody knows GDP, gross domestic product, right? Everybody knows, and country's well-being is measured by GDP. Every time the budget finance minister will talk about real GDP growth increasing from this to this and so on. So that is a basic measure. It has limitations, but that's the only alternative, the big alternative. There are problems, but let's not go into that. that's the only acceptable measure all over the world, GDP, as a well-being of society. That the concept came into 1940s. Now, one European economist, he said, what must be GDP of India in the old times when it was a great civilization? What would be GDP of China in the year 1? And he actually, a prominent economist, he actually collected data, whatever he could, direct, indirect evidence, and he estimated India's GDP in year 1, in year 500, in the year 1000, in year 1500, in year 1600, and from then onwards, the data are available. Same thing he did for China. China in year 1, China in year 500, China in year 1000, and so on. And what does he find? It is an eye-opener, or it should be eye-opener. He found that India and China, they alternated in being the superpower of the world, using the modern language, superpower of the world. For 1 century or century and a half, China would be superpower. Then another 100 years, India would be superpower. Then China would take over. Then India would take over again. What was India's GDP in the year 1 when the Gregorian calendar started? The Gregorian calendar started in, that is the year 1. At that time, you will be surprised, friends. According to this foreigners' estimate, this is not by government of India, not by me, not even by Dr. Ambedkar. India's share in the global GDP in the year 1 was 30.5%. So nearly 31%. India alone. In 1991, when there was a major crisis in India, what was share of India in the global economy? It was less than 3%. Now ask yourself a question. Why did India's share in the global GDP came down from 30% or more to less than 3% in 1991 years? The only reason, I asked so many people, the standard stock answer that I got was it's because of the foreign rule. What nonsense. How long did the foreigners rule us? The British ruled us for 150 years. That's all. We are talking about 1991 years. A precipitous fall in India's share from more than 30% to less than 3%. The only reason why that happened was because of the caste system in India. What was the most prosperous period of India? It was 4 centuries before Christ, during the Maurya dynasty. Maurya dynasty was not the standard Brahminical dynasty or standard Kshatriya dynasty. Maurya dynasty, that was the period when that was the golden age for India. After the Gregorian calendar started, India's share has consistently declined. And it is easy to explain why. When 97.5% of the total population are denied the opportunities to prove themselves, to shape themselves, and contribute them to the society, how can that country continue to grow? It has to come down, and that is what has happened. So this is the explanation for precipitous fall. I'm trying to extend Dr. Ambedkar's logic to the later period. When did the caste system start? In India, caste system started. Dr. Ambedkar has estimated in Untouchables, he has estimated that it started in 4th century. 4th century after Christ. That is the period. 485. He puts the year also, 485. Now, that was the end of the Maurya dynasty and its followers, I think. But It's very interesting thing that has happened recently. There is a book written about early Indians. It came out just 2 months back. I have that book. Wonderful book. It gives evidence based on what is it called? Genomic genes based evidence, and they have found that the caste system in India started in the 4th century, in the same time that Dr. Ambedkar said. So when caste system was not dominant in the Maurya dynasty period, India was having its golden era. This is recognized. Whereas after the caste system came into being and became more and more oppressive, India's share in the global economy came down and fell precipitously from 30% plus to less than 3%. And that is taking an upward turn now. Why? Not because of those 3% people, but because the people from this 97%, particularly from the depressed strata of society, they are coming forward. I represent them. Many of you represent them. And they are contributing now. Those who were earlier kept outside the village outskirts, they are the people who have joined the mainstream and contributing. And that is why the graph is going up now. And we are now close to 4.5%. And it will go even further. We talk about India becoming a superpower, but that's a different story altogether. The point is, what Dr. Ambedkar was saying, he did a very perceptive analysis of the economic maladies caused by the adverse economic impact of social maladies like caste system. Also, Dr. Ambedkar, as I said, he was not a bookish economist at all. 1942 to 1946, he became a minister in the British central government of India. This is very interesting politically also. Gandhiji gave a call for Chale Jao, quit India, 9th August 1942. Because things were heating up, the British response was to take some of the Indians for the first time. Some of the Indians were taken into cabinet. So they did not call it cabinet or council of ministers, they called it Viceroy's Executive Council. So there were 6 Europeans, mainly British, and 6 Indians. One of those 6 was Dr. Ambedkar. And what was the charge given to Dr. Ambedkar is very interesting. Dr. Ambedkar had a charge of labor and employment, CPWD, that is Central Public Works, then energy, including electricity, water management, and minerals. Today, they would constitute something like 15 ministries, because minerals itself, there is a coal ministry, and then, for every mineral, there is a ministry or a combination of minerals. So, labor, employment, central CPWD, energy, that includes electricity, water management, and minerals. And what was the contribution made by Dr. Ambedkar? It's most remarkable. And many people, regrettably, don't even know about it. Who started the employment exchanges in our country? Dr. Ambedkar as a minister in the British cabinet. Who started? Now we talk about Skill India. Remember, Skill India is a big mission. Who started the first ever skill development program in public sector in India? It was none other than Dr. Ambedkar. By the way, in the private sector, who started the first, this is just for your information, in the private sector, who started the first skill development program in India? Do you know? You're not going to be able to imagine. Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. When he created Shantiniketan in 1921, He also created Shri Niketan. That was the first skill development center in India in the private sector, basically for the agricultural skills. But the first public sector effort at skill development was done by Dr. Ambedkar. Look at the range of labor welfare measures. Now they have become very common. First thing, working hours for industrial labor. They were 12 hours a day earlier. Dr. Ambedkar was the one who cut them down to 8 hours, from 12 hours to 8 hours. Then look at the minimum wages. The first move about minimum wages was made by Dr. Ambedkar. Medical facilities, housing facilities, insurance facilities, paid leave. All these provisions began with Dr. Ambedkar in the British government, as opposed to the Indian freedom struggle. Even, and yeah, this is a real shocker, a pleasant shocker. Even the maternity leave for industrial working women was provided for the first time by Dr. Ambedkar. Not only that, the water policy, the first water policy of the government was formulated by Jalaniti, as they call it now. The first policy was formulated by Dr. Ambedkar. Establishment of Central Water Commission. Again, contribution of Dr. Ambedkar. 2 dams, Damodar Valley Project and Hirakund Dam in Odisha. They were creations of Dr. Ambedkar as the minister. Even joining the rivers, it was not Suresh Prabhu who first talked about it. It was Dr. Ambedkar, and he in fact experimented with the Kosi River and other rivers in Bihar region. It didn't work out. He did not get enough time, but the idea was mooted by him at that time. Then establishment of the Central Electricity Authority, again creation of Dr. Ambedkar, and above all, the first mineral policy of India was done by Dr. Ambedkar. So even as an economic administrator, Dr. Ambedkar turned out to be more powerful and more effective than any other persons that we know of. Dr. Ambedkar was very sincerely hoping that he would be made the planning minister. There is no such thing as a planning minister in our country, but when planning commission was established, by definition, by construction, by law, of course, the Prime Minister himself is the chairman of the Planning Commission. Now chairman of Niti Aayog, which has replaced Planning Commission. Deputy chairman of Planning Commission is a minister level post. So that is like Minister of Planning, you can say. Montek Singh Ahluwalia was the deputy chairman of Planning Commission when I was a member of Planning Commission. Dr. Ambedkar wanted that. With his so much experience in labor, employment, public works department, in the energy sector, in water sector, in the mineral sector, he would have been a very obvious choice as the deputy chairman of the Planning Commission. But that was denied to him. And in 1951, when Dr. Ambedkar resigned because of the non-passage of the Hindu Code Bill, when he resigned from his cabinet post in September 1951, in the resignation letter, in the 4 reasons that he has given, he specifically talks about this. You know, that I was given law ministry, and which is nothing but an empty soap box, he called. And in spite of my background, I was never given any economic ministry. I was never given any membership of any important committee. In fact, even temporary charge of those ministries was never given to me. And I was promised by Jawaharlal, that is, of course, Pandit Nehru, the first Prime Minister, that I would be made, he said, the deputy, the planning minister, but that never happened. He went back on his promise. So this was one of the major reasons that he has cited in his resignation letter when he quit in September 1951 over the issue of the Hindu Code Bill. Now, the final point that I want to make is that if you look at all these things, what do you find? You find that, you find that what philosophy that Dr. Ambedkar had is philosophy, the economic philosophy that Dr. Ambedkar had was based, it had social, religious, and moral foundation. It was irrespective of the caste or creed, giving helping hand to everybody, inclusive, what we call inclusive growth now, and create a society based on, as Professor Uke very rightly observed in his presidential remarks, society based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and social justice. So that was his philosophy, and create a society based on pradnya, which is intellect, sheel, which means character, and karuna, which means compassion. Karuna gets mixed up with corona, but karuna, which is compassion. So a society to be built irrespective of, which will be based on liberty, equality, fraternity, and social justice, and based on pradnya, sheel, and karuna, creating a society which is beyond any caste, beyond any class, and based on democracy. Even on democracy, my friend Professor Dilip Uke quoted his speech before the Constituent Assembly, before it was adopted, before the Constitution was adopted on 26th November 1949. The speech that he made while presenting, just one day before, while presenting the final draft of the Constitution, is the best speech of Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar gave 537 speeches in all, of which, to my mind, very clearly, his speech of 25th November 1949, it should be a compulsory read for every Indian, because Dr. Ambedkar is talking about the future of India. So there, he emphasized that what we have got today, he said, is political democracy. That political democracy is necessary, but it is not sufficient. We have to add to that social democracy. We have to add to that economic democracy. If we do not add social and economic democracy to the political democracy cannot survive. In fact, I would like to quote him exactly what he said. It's remarkable, truly remarkable. What he said, and I quote, this is the end part, I quote, on January 26, 1950, he said, we are going to enter into a life of contradiction. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. In politics, we will be recognizing the principle of one man, one vote, and vote, one value. in our social and economic life, we shall, by reason of our social and economic structure, continue to deny the principle of one man, one value. How long, he said, how long shall we continue to live this life of contradictions? How long shall we continue to deny equality in our social and economic life? If we continue to deny it for long, we will do so only by putting our political democracy in peril. We must remove his contradiction. We must remove this contradiction at the earliest possible moment, or else those who suffer from it, those who suffer from inequality, will blow up the structure of political democracy which this assembly, that is Constituent Assembly, has so laboriously built up. Unquote. This is the thought that he has given in that speech, among many others. But this is a warning that he has given, that never be content with political democracy. You will not be able to sustain the political democracy unless you augment that with social democracy and with economic democracy. Now, whether we have succeeded or failed in doing that, to what extent we have succeeded, is for all of us to introspect and decide. But we have a long way to go to achieve the social and economic democracy as was envisioned by Dr. Ambedkar. Well, friends, I thank you very much for this splendid opportunity that was given to me to communicate with all of you today on a subject of great contemporary relevance and on a subject which is very close to my heart. Once again, I pay my tribute to the ever-inspiring memory of Dr. Ambedkar, and I also thank Professor Dilip Uke and his team for having given me this opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It's really marvelous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a treat for my ears. I was listening to you for the second time. I'm your student from Pune University. This is a very privileged occasion for me to be here. During your brief stint as a Vice Chancellor, I was studying at a law department with my mentor, Dr. Dilip Uke, sir, Vice Chancellor of the MLL Mumbai. So it's very, really a great pleasure for me and great opportunity for me to associate with this program.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir. If any doubt or query is there to any of the participant, I would ask them to put up any question or doubt.
No, typically after a speech like that, there's no Q&A. But I will tell you a very interesting story what happened. I've been giving these speeches, different facets of Dr. Ambedkar's personality for the last 2 days. Today morning, very unusual thing happened. Can you imagine? Indian embassy in South Korea had organized my speech for South Koreans. And there was a very large audience, and I addressed them online. And I talked about the multifaceted genius that Dr. Ambedkar was and his national contribution. And it was phenomenal and very big response. First time the Indian ambassador had taken this initiative to invite somebody from India to speak on subject like Dr. Ambedkar on Dr. Ambedkar Jayanti. So it was very interesting, and they asked me very, very good questions. By the way, my book, the family biography, is incredibly popular in Korea. And in the audience, there were lots of people who were holding the Korean version of my book to show me. It was such a great pleasure. Yeah, so it has been great. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
I have, my email you can write down and send me questions if you like. Dr. Narendra, one word, Doctor as in Doctor, DR, Narendra as in Narendra Modi, Dr. Narendra.Zadhav at gmail.com. Zadhav, Jadhav. In Delhi, uniformly they make me Yadav or Jadav or things happen. And importantly, I have a video channel, exclusive YouTube channel, where 350 of my speeches and interviews are there. So I would urge you, Professor Dilip,
Yes.
to please send me a link of this program. I will put this program also on my exclusive YouTube channel, and that channel you should subscribe, those who are interested, and see and listen to my old speeches and interviews. And always I'm free to, if you send me questions, I'll take some time, but I will respond
Yes.
to your queries. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your this kind words and enlightened words. You have taken us to the entire journey of Dr. Ambedkar from the economic perspective, which we law students usually are tend to ignore. Sometimes it happens because of our technicality of the subject. We tend to ignore that, but that is how we thought that today's program we will tap in that aspects of Dr. Ambedkar's life on economical plane, how his contribution, and as you said that to understand that book, Problem of Rupee, is a very difficult task even for the economist. I would say to even to go with that kind of your speeches and understand that economic perspective which you brought in for Dr. Ambedkar, also difficult for law students in that same scale like that. Yeah. So still, the
But
way
I
you have.
make it simple as possible.
Yes,
You
sir.
can't make it more simple than that.
Yes, sir. But still, whatever the way you have put forward your thoughts on Dr. Ambedkar were very simple one. We had, I guess, all of us would have understood maximum extent of all those things. Your thoughts on that, how the caste system is responsible for the downgradation of this GDP from year 1 to the year 1950 was really a kind of eye opener for many of us, because nowadays we are in also in the denial state. Many people do deny that the caste system is not having that much impact on the economic aspect of life, but it is indeed having that much one, and that you have demonstrated very forcefully and very rightly in this lecture. So on behalf of the Maharashtra National Law University, I
To
express my.
conclude, I just want to say a word that the address of my or ID of my exclusive YouTube channel is Dr. Narendra Zadhav World. One word. Doctor, that is Dr. Narendra Jadhav World. That is the address ID of my YouTube channel. Please do subscribe and benefit from that if possible. Yeah, sorry.
True, sir. True, sir. We will definitely try to subscribe. I myself is definitely going to subscribe to that one, and I will also urge my students also and faculty members also to subscribe to that one. And on behalf of Maharashtra National Law University, I'm really thankful to you from your busiest schedule, which you have, and you keep time for us. Therefore, we are very obliged to have you on the platform. I'm also thankful to our Vice Chancellor, sir, who had even spoke about how the social and economic democracies would be also an important point or important factors for the political democracy, without which the revolutionary changes may not be possible to be brought into the life of the people. That is how Dr. Uke sir has highlighted on the contribution of Dr. Ambedkar.
That as an outsider, I I'm not a law student or law legal luminary, but as an outsider, I can tell you that I'm very impressed by the achievements made by Maharashtra National Law University under the leadership of Vice Chancellor Dr. Dilip Uke.
Certainly,
As an
sir. Certainly, sir. Certainly. we are differently marching towards new heights every day, or like even during the pandemic we had tried to excel in whatever possible manner and with the guidance of sir we had explored so many other areas of legal education online platform also. So that is very true. And thank you so much for such a kind of such kind words and encouraging words for the MNLU Mumbai. We are really thankful to you. I'm also thanking our in-house registrar sir. Without his constant support, without his constant guidance also, such programs are not possible to happen. I also thank to Dr. Karuna ma'am, who has also taken continuously a kind of follow-up with the program and details and work out on this program. I also express my deep gratitude towards all my faculty colleagues who had been also there in this program, all my students and the participants who are not from the university also, they had also joined this program. I'm really, really thankful to all of them. With this, I take the opportunity to conclude the program. Jai Bhim to one and all. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And
Rishi,
we'd love to have
Yeah.
love to have you on our campus whenever
Yeah.
situation
Stay
normalizes.
safe, stay safe, and in due course, I will come over to your campus and visit all of you.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
look forward to that. Okay.
Thank you
all
so
right.
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Bye, Karuna. Bye.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, sir. Thank you. End करते session. Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes. Thank you.